Right now, someone weaker than you is winning. They're getting the promotion you deserved. They're commanding the respect you've earned. They're moving through the world like they own it while you're still asking for permission to exist. And the infuriating truth is this: they're not smarter than you. They're not more talented. They're not even better. They're just more certain. And certainty in this world is the only currency that matters. You've been lied to your entire life. They told you to be kind, to be humble, to wait your turn. They told you that good things come to those who wait, that hard work speaks for itself, that people will recognize your value if you just keep your head down and do the right thing. And you believed them. You played by the rules. You worked harder than everyone around you. You stayed quiet when you should have spoken. You softened yourself to make others comfortable. And where did it get you? Nowhere. Because while you were being good, someone else was being bold. And bold always wins. This book is not about motivation. It's not about positive thinking or manifesting your dreams or becoming your best self. This is about power. Raw, unapologetic, dangerous power. The kind that makes rooms go quiet when you enter. The kind that makes people recalibrate their entire approach just by being near you. The kind that turns rejection into fuel and silence into a weapon. This is about becoming the person others fear to cross, not because you're violent, but because you're untouchable, emotionally, psychologically, strategically. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this 5 centuries ago. He watched the courts of Renaissance Italy and saw the truth that everyone else was too afraid to admit. Morality doesn't govern power. Perception does. The prince who appeared strong kept his throne. The one who appeared weak lost everything, no matter how virtuous he was. Because people don't follow the righteous. They follow the certain. They follow the one who looks like they cannot be moved, cannot be shaken, cannot be denied. And if you don't embody that certainty, you will always be at the mercy of someone who does. So let me be clear about what you're about to read. This book will not make you nicer. It will not make you more likable. It will not teach you how to win friends and influence people through charm and charisma. This book will make you dangerous. It will teach you how to kill the part of yourself that still begs for approval. How to walk into any room and own it without saying a word. How to speak with such finality that people don't dare question you. How to turn rejection into a strategic advantage. How to rewire your identity so completely that manipulation becomes impossible, because you're no longer moved by the things that control everyone else. And here's what most people will never tell you. Confidence is not a feeling, it's a decision. It's not something you wait to have. It's something you perform until it becomes you. The weak wait to feel ready. The powerful act as if they already are. And the world, in its infinite gullibility, believes the performance. Every single time, because people are not rational, they're emotional. They don't follow logic, they follow conviction. And if you can project absolute certainty, even when you have none, you will control every situation you enter. This book is divided into 3 parts. In part 1, we dismantle the servant, that voice in your head that apologizes before speaking, that instinct to make yourself smaller to avoid conflict, that desperate need to be understood and accepted. We kill it, brutally, permanently, because you cannot be powerful while that version of you still exists. In part 2, we build the presence, the walk, the posture, the silence, the stare, The voice. Everything about you will communicate one message. I am not here to compete. I am here because I've already won. And in part 3, we forge the untouchable mind. The one that cannot be manipulated, cannot be provoked, cannot be shaken. The mind that turns every attack into data, every rejection into advantage, every silence into dominance. By the end of this book, you will not be the same person. You will move differently, speak differently, think differently. You will stop explaining yourself, stop seeking validation, stop reacting to provocations. You will become cold where you were once desperate, calculated where you were once emotional, unreachable where you were once available. And people will notice. They will feel the shift before you even say a word. Some will respect you, some will fear you, some will hate you, and you will not care, because caring about their opinion is what kept you weak in the first place. So if you're here for comfort, close this book now. If you're here for easy answers and gentle encouragement, you're in the wrong place. But if you're here because you're tired of being overlooked, tired of being controlled, tired of watching weaker people win, simply because they carry themselves with more certainty than you do, then keep reading. Because everything is about to change. Not gradually, not eventually, no. From this moment forward, you are no longer the person who waits. You are the person who decides, and that decision starts here. Welcome to Dangerous Confidence. Let's begin. Part 1. Killing the Servant, Chapter 1. You weren't born weak. You were trained. There is a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. The one who spoke without hesitation, who took what he wanted without asking, who moved through the world with the natural arrogance of a child who hasn't yet learned to doubt himself. That version was real, and then they killed it. Not with violence, with repetition, with rules, with consequences designed to make you manageable. You were taught to raise your hand before speaking, to wait your turn, to say please and thank you, to apologize when you took up space, to shrink yourself when others were uncomfortable. And you learned. You learned so well that the conditioning became invisible. It stopped feeling like obedience. It started feeling like who you are, but it's not who you are. It's who you were made to be. And the difference matters. Think about the last time you wanted to say something bold. Did you say it? Or did you soften it first? Add a disclaimer? Apologize before you even began? That's not wisdom. That's programming. That's the inner servant speaking. The one who was trained to please, to submit, to avoid conflict at all costs. And if that voice still runs your decisions, you are not free. You are still obeying rules that no longer serve you. Rules designed to keep you controllable. Machiavelli wrote that men are more afraid of losing what they have than they are eager to gain something new. And what you have right now is safety, the safety of being liked, the safety of not offending anyone, the safety of staying small enough that no one targets you. And that safety is your prison. Because as long as you prioritize being safe over being powerful, you will never command respect. You will never own a room. You will never become the person others hesitate to cross. You will just be tolerated. And toleration is not respect. It's permission to exist as long as you don't threaten anyone. So the first step in your transformation is brutal honesty. You must admit that you are not who you think you are. You are not humble. You are afraid. You are not polite. You are people-pleasing. You are not considerate. You are controlled. Every time you soften your words, you are serving. Every time you over-explain, you are submitting. Every time you laugh nervously, you are announcing your weakness. And until you see that clearly, you cannot kill it. Here's the test. When someone challenges you, what is your first instinct? To defend yourself? To explain why you're right? To make sure they understand your intentions? If so, you are still a servant, because a ruler doesn't defend. He doesn't explain. He simply states reality and lets others adjust. When you feel the urge to justify yourself, that is the servant speaking. And from this moment forward, you silence him. You do not argue. You do not apologize. You state your position and move on. And if they don't like it, that is their problem, not yours. Now let's talk about what replacing the servant actually looks like. It starts with inversion. Every instinct you have right now is wrong. Every time you want to shrink, expand. Every time you want to explain, pause. Every time you want to smile to ease tension, stare. Because confidence is not a feeling. It's a behavior. And that behavior is the exact opposite of what you've been trained to do. You walk faster. You speak slower. You take up space. You stop nodding along. You stop softening your tone to make people comfortable. You let them be uncomfortable because their discomfort is not your responsibility. Their approval is not your goal. And here's what will happen. At first, it will feel wrong. It will feel arrogant. It will feel like you're being an asshole. Good. That means the programming is breaking. That means you're finally acting outside the bounds of what you were trained to accept. And as you continue, something will shift. People will start treating you differently. They will stop interrupting you. They will think twice before challenging you. They will move out of your way, not because you demanded it, but because your energy demands it, because you stopped asking for space and started taking it. This is not about being rude. It's about being unapologetic. There is a difference. Rude is reactive. Unapologetic is controlled. Rude seeks attention. Unapologetic commands it without trying. Rude is weak pretending to be strong. Unapologetic is strength that doesn't need to pretend. And once you embody that difference, once you stop performing politeness and start performing power, you will never go back. Because being liked is exhausting. Being feared is effortless. So your first assignment is this. For the next week, do not apologize unless you've actually caused harm. Not inconvenience, harm. Do not soften your statements with maybes or I thinks. State what you know as if it is fact. Do not explain yourself unless someone has earned the right to an explanation. And watch what happens. Watch how people recalibrate. Watch how they stop testing you. Watch how they start respecting you without you having to demand it. Because respect is not given. It's taken. And the moment you stop asking for it is the moment you start receiving it. The servant is dead. You killed him. And in his place, something far more dangerous is awakening. Not a tyrant, not a bully, but a man who no longer negotiates his right to exist. A man who moves through the world as if he owns it, not because he's delusional, but because he finally stopped letting others tell him he doesn't. That man is you. And from this point forward, that is the only version of you that matters. Chapter 2. If IT makes you small, kill IT. There is a ruthless simplicity to power that most people never grasp. And it starts with a single principle. Anything that makes you smaller must be eliminated, not managed, not balanced, not accepted as part of who you are. Eliminated. A thought, a habit, a relationship, a routine. If it shrinks you, it's already your enemy. And enemies don't deserve negotiation. They deserve execution. You already know what needs to go. You've known for years. That friend who always makes you feel inadequate. That habit of checking what others think before you act. That voice in your head that replays every mistake you've ever made. That job that drains you just to pay for a life you don't even want. You know, but you've been too afraid to cut it out. Too afraid of the emptiness that might follow. Too afraid of being alone, being wrong, being judged for choosing yourself over comfort. And that fear is exactly why you're stuck. Machiavelli said it plainly. Men should be either caressed or destroyed. There is no middle ground. If you tolerate something that weakens you, it will eventually destroy you. Because weakness is not static, it compounds. That friend who undermines you doesn't just take today's confidence. He trains you to doubt yourself tomorrow. That habit of seeking approval doesn't just cost you one decision. It rewires your entire identity around external validation. And before you know it, you're not living your life. You're performing a version of yourself designed to keep everyone else comfortable. And that performance is killing you. So let's get specific. What in your life right now makes you feel small? Write it down, not in your head, on paper. Because when you see it written, it becomes real. It stops being a vague discomfort and becomes a target. Maybe it's a person who constantly interrupts you. Maybe it's a belief that you're not ready yet. Maybe it's a pattern of saying yes when you want to say no. Whatever it is, name it. And then ask yourself the only question that matters. Does this make me more powerful or less? If the answer is less, it's already sentenced. Now you just have to execute. Here's what most people get wrong. They think eliminating something means having a big confrontation, a dramatic breakup, a burning of bridges. But power is rarely that loud. Power is surgical. You don't explode on the friend who drains you. You just stop being available. You don't quit the job in a blaze of glory. You quietly build an exit while they still think you're loyal. You don't announce that you're done seeking approval. You just stop asking for it. And one day people look up and realize you're gone. Not angry, not resentful, just gone. And that absence is more powerful than any argument you could have had. But the hardest thing to kill is not external. It's the voice inside you that still wants to be liked. The one that panics when someone is disappointed in you. The one that needs to explain, to justify, to make sure everyone understands your intentions. That voice is not your conscience. It's your conditioning. And it's the final barrier between you and true power. Because as long as you need to be understood, you can be controlled. As long as you care what they think, they own you. And until you kill that need, you will never be free. So how do you kill it? You starve it. Every time it speaks, you ignore it. Every time it tells you to apologize, you stay silent. Every time it tells you to soften your stance, you double down. And at first, it will scream. It will make you feel guilty. It will tell you you're being selfish, arrogant, cruel. But you will not listen, because that voice has been lying to you your entire life. It told you that being small would keep you safe. It didn't. It told you that being agreeable would make you loved. It didn't. It told you that explaining yourself would earn respect. It didn't. All it did was make you controllable. And now you're done. Here's the hard truth. Some people will not like the new you. They will say you've changed, that you're not the person they thought you were, and they're right. You're not. You're no longer the version of yourself that existed for their convenience. You're no longer the person who shrinks to make them comfortable. And that will bother them, because your growth exposes their stagnation. Your confidence threatens their control. Your refusal to stay small forces them to confront the fact that they're still choosing to be. And they will try to pull you back. They will guilt you. They will question your motives. They will say you're not being yourself. And you will let them, because their discomfort is not your problem. Their need for you to stay weak is not your responsibility. And here's what will happen once you've cut out everything that makes you small. You will feel lighter. Not happier, lighter. Like you've been carrying weight you didn't even know was there. You will move faster, decide faster, act faster, because you're no longer weighed down by obligations that were never yours to carry. You're no longer slowed by relationships that only took and never gave. You're no longer paralyzed by the need to be liked by people who never respected you anyway. And in that likeness you will find something you haven't felt in years. Freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want. The freedom to be who you actually are, without apology, without explanation, without permission. This is the price of power. Everything that makes you small must die. The thought that you're not ready, the belief that you need permission, the relationship that drains you, the habit that softens you, the fear that you'll be alone if you stop performing. All of it, gone. And what remains is not emptiness. It's clarity. It's focus. It's the raw, unfiltered version of you that the world has been waiting for. The version that doesn't ask. The version that takes. The version that commands without demanding. And once that version emerges, you will wonder how you ever tolerated being anything less. So start now. Identify one thing that makes you small. Just one, and eliminate it. Not tomorrow. Not when the timing is right. Now. Stop answering that person's calls. Stop softening your statements. Stop apologizing for existing, and watch what happens. Watch how the world shifts when you stop negotiating with your own weakness. Watch how respect appears when you stop chasing it. Watch how power flows to you the moment you stop giving it away. Because power is not something you earn, it's something you take. And the first thing you must take is control over your own life. Everything else follows from that. Chapter 3. Nice men are tools. Let me say this as plainly as possible. If your primary strategy in life is to be nice, you are not a good person. You are a coward, and the world will treat you accordingly, because nice is not a virtue. It's a survival mechanism. It's what weak people use to avoid conflict, to stay off the radar, to make sure no one has a reason to come after them. And while that might keep you safe, it will never make you powerful, because power is not given to people who are nice. It's given to people who are useful. And the moment you stop being useful, your niceness will not save you. It will make your disposal easier. Think about every truly nice person you know. the one who never says no, the one who always helps, the one who bends over backward to make everyone else comfortable. Now ask yourself, do people respect that person, or do they just use them? Because here's the truth. Niceness without boundaries is not kindness. It's weakness. And people can smell weakness the way sharks smell blood in water. They will circle you. They will test you. And when they realize you will never push back, they will take everything you have, your time, your energy, your resources, and they will do it with a smile, because you taught them that you will never stop them. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He watched princes who tried to rule through generosity and fairness, and he watched them get destroyed, not because they were bad leaders, but because they were predictable. And predictability is a death sentence in any arena where power is at play. Because once people know you will always be nice, they know they can push you. They know they can take from you. They know you will never retaliate. And the moment you become predictable, you lose all leverage. You become a tool, and tools get used until they break. Then they get replaced. So what's the alternative? Are you supposed to be cruel, selfish, ruthless? Not exactly. You're supposed to be precise. You're supposed to be strategic. You're supposed to give only when it serves your interests, and withheld when it doesn't. That's not cruelty. That's power. Because the powerful don't help everyone. They help the people who can help them back. They invest in relationships that have value, and they cut off the ones that don't. And yes, that makes some people angry. Yes, that makes some people call you selfish. But here's what they won't tell you. Those people were never on your side to begin with. They were just benefiting from your inability to say no. Let me give you an example. Someone asks you for a favor. They need help moving. They need a ride. They need you to cover their shift. And you say yes. Not because you want to, but because saying no feels uncomfortable. Because you don't want to be seen as selfish. Because you think that if you keep helping, eventually they'll help you back. But they won't. They never do. Because you've already trained them that you will give without expecting anything in return. And people don't value what costs them nothing. So they keep asking, and you keep giving. And eventually, you resent them. But whose fault is that? Theirs for asking, or yours for never saying no? Now imagine a different scenario. They ask for the favor, and you say no, not rudely, not with an explanation, just no. What happens? At first, they're surprised, maybe even offended, but then something shifts. They stop seeing you as the person they can always count on, and they start seeing you as someone who values their own time, someone who has boundaries, someone who is not desperate for approval. And paradoxically, they respect you more, not because you helped them, but because you didn't, because you signaled that your time is valuable. That access to you is not guaranteed, that you are not a tool to be used whenever convenient. This is the power of strategic niceness. You are not nice to everyone. You are nice to the people who deserve it. And how do you know who deserves it? By their reciprocity. If someone only reaches out when they need something, they don't deserve your help. If someone takes and never gives, they don't deserve your energy. If someone respects you only when it's convenient, they don't deserve your time, and you don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe them a reason. You just owe yourself the self-respect to stop being their doormat. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Some of those people are close to you. Family, friends, people you've known for years, and cutting them off feels wrong. It feels cruel. It feels like you're becoming the kind of person you swore you'd never be. But ask yourself this: if they only value you for what you give them, are they really close to you? Or are they just close to the benefits you provide? Because real relationships are reciprocal. Real respect is mutual. And if you're the only one giving, you're not in a relationship. You're in a transaction. And you're losing. So what do? You become selectively generous. You give to those who give back. You help those who have helped you. You invest in relationships that have value. And everyone else, you withdraw. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. You stop being available. You stop saying yes. You stop bending yourself to accommodate them. And you watch what happens. Some people will get angry. They will call you selfish. They will say you've changed. And they're right. You've stopped being a tool. And that upsets people who were benefiting from your weakness. But others will respect you. They will see that you value yourself, that you have standards, that you are not desperate for approval. And those are the people worth keeping, because they don't want a tool. They want a partner, someone who brings value because they choose to, not because they're too weak to say no. And when you surround yourself with those people, your entire life changes. Because you're no longer giving to people who take, you're exchanging with people who reciprocate. And that exchange creates power, real power, the kind that compounds. So here's your task. Make a list of everyone who takes from you, everyone who only calls when they need something, everyone who expects your help but never offers theirs, and cut them off, not with anger, not with confrontation, just with absence. Stop answering. Stop helping. Stop being available. And when they ask why, say nothing. Because people who genuinely cared would have never put you in that position. And people who didn't care don't deserve an explanation. Your silence will say everything they need to hear, and your absence will teach them a lesson they'll never forget. You are not a tool. You are a force, and forces are not controlled. They are respected, or they are avoided. Either way, you win. Chapter 4. The Death of Hesitation. Hesitation is not caution. It's fear wearing a mask, and every time you hesitate, you announce to the world that you are uncertain, that you don't trust yourself, that you are still waiting for permission from some invisible authority that will never arrive. And in that moment of hesitation, you lose. Not because you made the wrong choice, but because you revealed your weakness. And once people see that you hesitate, they know they can manipulate you. They know they can pressure you. They know that if they push hard enough, you will fold. Think about the last time you hesitated. Maybe you were about to speak up in a meeting. Maybe you were about to make a bold move. Maybe you were about to set a boundary, but something stopped you. A voice in your head that said, wait. That said, not yet. That said, what if you're wrong? And so you paused. You reconsider. You waited for more information, more confidence, more certainty. And what happened? Someone else acted. Someone else spoke. Someone else took the opportunity, and you were left with regret. Not because you weren't capable, but because you waited for a feeling that never comes. the feeling of being ready. And here's the truth. That feeling doesn't exist. No one is ever ready. People just act anyway. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the dangers of hesitation. He observed that leaders who deliberated too long lost their advantage, not because their decisions were wrong, but because in the time it took them to decide, the opportunity passed. The enemy adapted. The situation changed. And what could have been a victory became a missed chance, because in the game of power, timing is everything. And hesitation kills timing. It turns boldness into cowardice, confidence into doubt, action into paralysis. And once you develop a reputation as someone who hesitates, you become irrelevant, because no one follows the indecisive. They follow the certain, even if that certainty is misplaced. So how do you kill hesitation? You don't wait to feel ready. You act as if you already are. You don't wait for the right moment. You make the moment right by acting in it. You don't wait for certainty. You create it through commitment, because confidence is not a prerequisite for action. It's a byproduct of it. Every time you act despite fear, you build proof that you can, and that proof becomes the foundation for future action. But if you wait for confidence before acting, you will wait forever, because confidence without evidence is delusion, and evidence is only created through action. Here's a simple framework. The next time you feel the urge to hesitate, do the opposite. Speak immediately. Decide immediately. Act immediately, not recklessly, but decisively, because the quality of your decision matters less than the speed of it. In most situations, a fast decision, executed well, beats a perfect decision executed late, because speed communicates certainty, and certainty creates followership. People don't follow perfect plans. They follow decisive leaders. And the moment you stop hesitating is the moment you start leading, even if you're only leading yourself. But let's address the fear underneath hesitation, because hesitation is never really about the decision. It's about the consequences. What if I'm wrong? What if they judge me? What if I fail? And those questions are legitimate. But they're also irrelevant, because whether you act or not, consequences will follow. If you act, you might fail. But if you don't act, you will definitely lose, because inaction is a choice, and that choice guarantees that nothing changes. So the real question is not whether you might fail. It's whether you can live with the certainty of never knowing what could have been. And for most people, that regret is far more painful than any failure. Now, let's talk about what happens when you stop hesitating. First, people start taking you seriously. They stop testing you. They stop questioning you, because your decisiveness signals that you are not someone who can be swayed. You are not someone who seeks consensus. You are someone who decides and moves forward. And that is magnetic. People are exhausted by indecision. They want someone to follow, someone who knows where they're going. Even if they're not entirely sure, as long as they move with conviction, others will follow, because conviction is contagious, and hesitation is repellent. Second, you build momentum. Every decision you make without hesitation creates forward motion, and motion creates energy, and energy attracts opportunity, because opportunities don't come to people who are standing still. They come to people who are moving, who are acting, who are building. And the faster you move, the more opportunities appear, not because you're lucky, but because you're visible. You're active, you're in the game, and the game rewards players, not spectators. Third, you develop trust in yourself, and self-trust is the ultimate form of power, because when you trust yourself, you stop seeking external validation. You stop asking for opinions. You stop looking for permission. You just decide and act. And that self-reliance makes you dangerous because you are no longer controllable through doubt. You are no longer manipulable through fear. You are no longer stoppable through criticism. You just move relentlessly, decisively, unstoppably. So here's the practice. For the next 7 days, eliminate all hesitation. When you think of something to say, say it. When you think of something to do, do it. When you face a decision, make it immediately, and watch what happens. Watch how much faster your life moves. Watch how much more respect you command. Watch how much more confident you feel, not because you're perfect, but because you're decisive, and decisiveness is power. Real, tangible, undeniable power. The kind that changes everything. Chapter 5. The language of rulers' words are not just communication. They are weapons. And the way you use them determines whether you are a ruler or a subject. Most people speak as if they are asking for permission. Their sentences rise at the end like questions. Their statements are softened with maybes and I thinks. They fill silence with nervous laughter and unnecessary explanations. And every time they do, they are announcing their rank. They are saying, I am beneath you. I need your approval. I am not certain. And the world treats them accordingly. A ruler speaks differently, not louder, not more, but with finality. Every sentence sounds like a conclusion. Every word carries weight. There is no hedging, no softening, no apology. They speak as if their words are not up for debate, as if what they say is simply how things are, and people believe them, not because they're always right, but because they sound like they cannot be wrong. And in a world where most people are drowning in uncertainty, certainty is leadership. Even if that certainty is manufactured, let me give you specific examples. A weak man says, I think we should try this approach. A ruler says, we're going with this approach. Notice the difference? The weak man is seeking validation. He's leaving room for disagreement. He's signaling that his opinion is just one option among many. The ruler is stating reality. He's not asking. He's deciding. And that shift in language changes everything, because people don't follow suggestions, they follow directives. And the moment you stop suggesting and start directing, you become someone worth following. Another example. A weak man says, I could be wrong, but a ruler says this is how it is. The weak man is preemptively defending himself against criticism. He's creating an escape hatch in case he's challenged, and that escape hatch destroys his credibility. Because if he's not certain, why should anyone else be? The ruler offers no such escape. He states his position and moves on, and if someone disagrees, he doesn't defend. He doesn't explain. He just reaffirms or dismisses, because his reality is not up for negotiation. Now let's talk about tone. Tone is more important than words. You can say the right thing with the wrong tone and still lose, because people read tone before they process meaning. A high-pitched fast-paced, energetic tone signals insecurity. It signals that you're trying too hard, that you need their approval, that you're performing. A low, slow, measured tone signals control. It signals that you are comfortable, that you don't need anything from them, that you are simply stating facts. And facts don't require enthusiasm. They just are. Practice this. The next time you speak, slow down. Pause between thoughts. Lower your pitch slightly. Remove all filler words. Like, sort of. And watch how people respond differently. They lean in. They stop interrupting. They treat your words with more weight. Not because you said anything profound, but because you sounded like someone who believes what they're saying, and belief is more persuasive than evidence. Here's another critical element: brevity. The more you say, the weaker you appear, because explaining is defending, and defending is losing. A ruler doesn't need to justify. He states, and the statement stands on its own. If someone challenges it, he doesn't counter with more words. He either ignores the challenge or responds with something even shorter. I disagree. That's incorrect. Not interested. 3 words, final. No room for debate. No invitation to continue. And that brevity is devastating, because it signals that you have nothing to prove, that your time is more valuable than their opinion, that you are done with the conversation, whether they are or not. Now let's address questions. Questions are powerful, but only when used correctly. Most people ask questions to seek approval. Does that make sense? Is that okay? What do you think? These are weak questions. They hand power to the other person. They make them the judge of your statement. A ruler asks questions to control. When will this be done? Why wasn't this handled? What's the next step? These are not requests for information. They are commands disguised as questions. They assume authority. They put the other person in the position of answering to you, and that positional shift is power. But the most powerful use of language is silence. Silence after a statement is dominance. It dares the other person to challenge you, and most won't. They'll fill the silence with agreement or retreat. Silence after a question is pressure. It forces the other person to answer, and the longer you wait, the more uncomfortable they become. And discomfort is leverage, because people will do almost anything to escape discomfort. They'll agree. They'll comply. They'll reveal information they didn't intend to share, all because you refused to fill the silence. So here's your practice. For 1 full day, speak only in statements. No questions unless they're directive. No explanations unless someone has earned them. No softening, no hedging, and observe what happens. You'll notice people treating you differently. They'll interrupt less. They'll challenge less. They'll defer more. Not because you're being aggressive, but because you're finally speaking like someone who expects to be obeyed. An expectation shapes reality more than ability ever will. The language of rulers is not about vocabulary. It's about certainty. It's about speaking as if your words are not opinions, but facts, as if your decisions are not proposals, but conclusions, as if your presence is not requested, but required. And when you master that language, you don't need titles. You don't need credentials. You don't need permission, because your words carry their own authority. And authority, once established through language, is almost impossible to challenge, because to challenge it would require certainty equal to yours. And most people don't have that. They're still waiting for permission to speak at all. Chapter 6. The walk of power. Before you say a word, your body is already speaking. And what it's saying determines whether people respect you or dismiss you. Most people move through the world like they're apologizing for taking up space. They hunch. They shuffle. They make themselves smaller. They avoid eye contact. And every one of those movements is a confession. I am not a threat. I am not important. You can ignore me, and the world listens. Because people treat you exactly how you present yourself. If you move like prey, they will hunt you. If you move like a predator, they will avoid you. It's that simple. A powerful man doesn't arrive loudly. He doesn't announce himself. He just enters, and the room feels it before it sees it. There's a shift in energy, a change in atmosphere, not because he's doing anything dramatic, but because everything about him signals control. His posture is upright but relaxed. His movements are slow but deliberate. His gaze is steady but not aggressive. And that combination of calm and certainty is magnetic, because it communicates one message: I belong here. And that belief makes others believe it too. Let's start with posture. Stand up right now. Pull your shoulders back. Lift your chest. Lengthen your spine. Now notice how that feels. It probably feels slightly uncomfortable. That's because you've been slouching for years. And slouching is a habit. But it's a habit that costs you respect every single day, because posture is power. When you stand tall, people perceive you as more competent, more confident, more deserving of respect. Not because of anything you've done, just because of how you're carrying yourself. And if something that's simple can change how people see you, why wouldn't you fix it? Now let's talk about pace. Most people move too fast. They rush from place to place like they're late for something. And that rushing signals desperation. It signals that you're reactive, that you're being pulled by external forces rather than moving by your own will. A powerful man moves slowly, not because he's lazy, but because he's deliberate. He doesn't need to rush. He's not trying to prove anything. He's just going where he's going. And that calm, unhurried pace is unsettling to people who are used to chaos, because it suggests that you are in control, that you are not affected by the urgency that controls everyone else. Eye contact is next. This is where most people fail completely. They glance, they look away, they check their phone, and every time they break eye contact, they signal submission. Because in the animal kingdom, the one who looks away first is the one who yields, and humans are no different. When you hold eye contact just a little longer than comfortable, you create tension. And that tension is power. It doesn't mean you stare people down aggressively. It means you don't flinch. You don't look away first. You let them break contact, and when they do, something invisible shifts. They've acknowledged your dominance without a word being spoken. Now let's talk about space. Powerful men take up space. They spread out. They don't fold themselves into the smallest possible area. They sit with their arms wide. They stand with their feet shoulder-width apart. They occupy the space they're in without apology. And that expansion signals ownership. It says this space is mine. You can share it if I allow you to. But don't mistake proximity for permission, because I am not making room for you. You are adjusting to me, and that frame is everything. Because when you take up space, people unconsciously treat you as if you own the room. Even if it's not yours, silence and movement is also critical. You don't fidget. You don't tap your foot. You don't play with your phone. You don't fill stillness with motion. You just exist, still, grounded, present. And that stillness is unnerving, because most people are so uncomfortable with themselves that they can't be still for more than a few seconds. They need distraction. They need stimulation. They need something to do, but you don't. You can just be. And that ability to be still without discomfort signals a level of self-control that most people don't have. And self-control is power. Because if you can control yourself, people assume you can control them too. Now let's combine all of this. You walk into a room, your posture is upright. Your pace is slow. Your eyes scan the room without hurry. You make eye contact with a few people and hold it a beat longer than comfortable. You choose where to sit or stand. You take up space. You settle in. You don't speak immediately. You just observe. And in that observation, the entire room recalibrates. Because your energy is saying, I am not here to impress you. I am not here to seek approval. I am here. And that is enough. And people respond to that frame. They stop talking as loud. They stop performing as hard, because they're trying to figure you out, and you're giving them nothing. Just presence. Just stillness. Just power. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is loud. Arrogance needs validation. Arrogance performs. This is certainty. Certainty is quiet. Certainty doesn't need anything. Certainty just is. And when you embody that certainty in your walk, your posture, your gaze, your stillness, you become undeniable. Not because you're perfect, but because you're unshakable. And unshakable is what everyone is looking for. Someone who won't bend, won't break, won't fold. And when you present yourself as that person, the world treats you as such. So here's your assignment. For the next week, focus only on how you move. Walk slower, stand taller. Hold eye contact. Take up space. Be still. And watch what happens. Watch how people move out of your way. How they listen when you speak. How they defer when you decide. Not because you demanded it, but because your body demanded it for you. And that is the power of presence. It's not something you announce. It's something you embody. And once you embody it, you will never want to go back to moving through the world like you're apologizing for existing. Because existing is not something that requires apology. It's something that demands respect. And now you'll finally be showing people that you know that. Part 2. Mastering Presence, Chapter 7. Silence is control. You've been taught that communication is about talking, about expressing yourself, about making sure people understand you. But that's a lie designed to keep you weak, because the one who talks first usually loses. The one who explains is defending. The one who fills silence is revealing their fear of it. And fear is weakness. Real power is not in what you say. It's in what you don't say. It's in the silence that makes others uncomfortable enough to fill it themselves. And when they do, they give you everything. Their intentions, their insecurities, their leverage points. All because you had the discipline to say nothing. Think about the last time you were in a negotiation or a confrontation. or even a simple conversation where something important was at stake. Who spoke first? Who filled the awkward pauses? Who over-explained to ease the tension? If it was you, you lost, not because what you said was wrong, but because you revealed that silence makes you uncomfortable. And discomfort is weakness, and weakness is exploitable, because the moment someone knows you can't handle silence, they know they can pressure you just by waiting, just by staring, just by letting the tension build until you crack and say something you didn't mean to say. Machiavelli understood that silence is a form of control. In the courts of power, the ones who spoke the least were often the most feared, not because they were cruel, but because they were unpredictable. No one knew what they were thinking. No one knew where they stood. And that uncertainty kept everyone on edge, because humans crave certainty. And when you deny them that certainty through silence, they start projecting onto you. They start assuming you're thinking the worst. They start filling the gap with their own fears. And those fears work in your favor, because now they're not responding to you. They're responding to the version of you they've created in their head. And that version is always more powerful than the real you. So how do you use silence as a weapon? First, you master your own discomfort with it, because silence is only powerful if you're comfortable in it. If you're squirming, if you're internally panicking, if you're desperate to fill the gap, your silence won't work. It will just make you seem awkward. But if you can sit in silence with the calm of someone who has nothing to prove, it becomes a force. It becomes pressure. And that pressure makes others act. They start talking. They start explaining. They start revealing. And you just listen, absorbing, calculating, deciding how to use what they're giving you. Second, you use silence strategically. After you make a statement, you stop. You don't elaborate. You don't clarify. You just let the statement sit. And in that sitting, the statement gains weight. It becomes definitive because you didn't hedge it. You didn't soften it. You didn't give them an escape route to disagree. You just said what you said and moved on internally. And now the burden is on them. They have to respond. They have to decide whether to challenge you. And most won't, because challenging someone who is comfortable with silence requires certainty. And most people don't have that. They're still looking for permission to disagree. Third, you use silence as punishment. When someone says something you don't respect, you don't argue, you don't correct. You just go silent. And that silence is louder than any rebuttal, because it says I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. And that dismissiveness is devastating. It signals that their opinion doesn't matter, that their words don't deserve your attention. And people will do almost anything to regain your attention. They'll backtrack, they'll apologize, they'll try to win you back, and all you had to do was nothing. But here's where most people struggle. They think silence means not talking. But silence is not passive, it's active. It's not the absence of communication. It's a different form of it. When you're silent, you're still communicating. You're communicating that you don't need to fill the space, that you're not uncomfortable, that you're in control. And that communication is more powerful than words, because words can be argued with. Silence can't, it just is. And people either adjust to it or they leave. And either way, you win. Now, let's talk about what happens when you master silence. First, people stop testing you, because testing requires a reaction. And if you don't react, the test fails. So they stop. They stop prodding. They stop challenging. They stop trying to get a rise out of you, because they realize it doesn't work. And once they realize that, they start treating you differently. They start treating you like someone who cannot be moved. And that perception becomes reality. Second, people start revealing themselves to you, because silence creates a vacuum. And humans hate vacuums, so they fill it. They talk, they explain, they share more than they intended. And all you have to do is sit there and listen. And in that listening, you gain leverage. Because now you know what they want, what they fear, what they're hiding. And knowledge is power, real power. The kind that allows you to control situations without anyone realizing you're doing it. Third, your words carry more weight. Because when you speak rarely, people listen intently. They know that if you're saying something, it's worth hearing. Because you don't waste words. You don't fill air. You speak only when it matters. And that rarity makes your words valuable. So when you do speak, people stop what they're doing. They lean in. They pay attention. Because they know this might be the only thing you say, and they don't want to miss it. So here's the practice. For one full day, speak only when necessary. Not when comfortable, not when you feel like it. Only when it serves a purpose. And watch what happens. Watch how much more respect you command. Watch how much more information people give you. Watch how much more powerful you feel. Not because you talked, but because you didn't. Because silence is control, and control is power. And power is what you've been chasing all along. You just didn't know it was this simple. Chapter 8. The power of the stare. Your eyes are not just for seeing. They're for commanding. And most people have no idea how to use them. They glance. They look away. They avoid prolonged eye contact because it feels uncomfortable. And every time they do, they surrender power, because eye contact is not just polite. It's dominance, and the one who holds the gaze holds the power. Not in an aggressive way, but in a way that says, I see you. I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not looking away first. Let's start with the basics. When you're talking to someone, where do you look? If you're like most people, you look at them for a second, then glance away. Maybe you look down. Maybe you look to the side. Maybe you look past them. And every time you break eye contact, you signal submission. You signal that you're uncomfortable, that you're not confident in what you're saying, that you're seeking relief from the intensity of being seen. And that seeking is weakness, because powerful people don't seek relief. They create it in others. Now contrast that with someone who holds eye contact, not aggressively, not in a staring contest, but calmly, steadily, without flinching. What do you feel when someone does that to you? Probably discomfort, maybe even intimidation, not because they're doing anything threatening, but because sustained eye contact creates pressure. It forces you to either meet their intensity or back down. And most people back down. They look away. They laugh nervously. They change the subject. And in that moment, they've lost. Because the one who breaks eye contact first is the one who yields. And yielding is the opposite of power. So how do you develop a powerful stare? First, you practice holding eye contact longer than comfortable. When you're talking to someone, lock eyes. Don't glance away. Don't look at their mouth or their forehead. Look directly into their eyes and hold it, even when it feels awkward. Even when you want to look away, hold it, because that discomfort you're feeling, they're feeling it too. And the question is, who will break first? If you do, you lose. If they do, you win. It's that simple. Second, you slow your blink rate. This sounds minor, but it's not. People who blink frequently appear nervous. People who blink slowly appear calm, because blinking is a micro break in eye contact. And the more you blink, the more breaks you're taking. The more breaks you take, the weaker you appear, so slow it down. Blink when you need to, but don't blink out of nervousness. Let your stare be uninterrupted. Let it be steady. Let it be heavy. Third, you remove all expression from your eyes when you need to. This is advanced, but it's devastatingly effective. When you stare at someone with dead eyes, with no warmth, no hostility, just neutrality, it's unnerving, because humans read emotion through eyes. And when there's no emotion to read, they don't know what to do. They don't know if you're angry, indifferent, or calculating. And that uncertainty is power, because now they're operating from fear. They're guessing. And people who are guessing are easy to control. But here's the nuance. You don't do this all the time. You don't walk around staring everyone down like a psychopath. That's not power. That's insecurity masquerading as strength. Real power is selective. You use the stare when it matters. When someone is challenging you. When someone is testing you. When someone needs to be reminded of their place. That's when you lock eyes. That's when you hold the gaze a beat longer than necessary. That's when you let them feel the weight of your attention. And they will. They will feel it in their chest, in their throat, in the way their voice wavers. And they will adjust, not because you said anything, but because your eyes said everything. Now let's talk about what the stare communicates. It communicates presence. It says, I am fully here. I am not distracted. I am not afraid. I am focused entirely on you. And that level of presence is rare. Most people are half present. They're thinking about something else. They're looking at their phone. They're scanning the room. But when you give someone your full, undivided, unblinking attention, it's intense, it's memorable, it's powerful, because they realize, possibly for the first time in a long time, that they are being truly seen. And being seen is both thrilling and terrifying. The stare also communicates dominance, not in a cruel way, but in a hierarchical way. It establishes who is comfortable and who is not, who is in control and who is reacting. And in any power dynamic, the one who is comfortable wins. Always, because comfort signals confidence. And confidence signals competence. And competence is what people follow. So when you can look someone in the eye without flinching, without breaking, without apologizing with your gaze, you establish frame. You establish that you are not beneath them, that you are not intimidated, that you are at minimum equal. And if they break first, you establish that you are above. But there's also a softer use of the stare. When you want to connect deeply with someone, sustained eye contact is intimacy. It says, I'm not hiding from you. I'm letting you see me, and I'm choosing to see you. And that vulnerability, when done from a place of strength, is magnetic. It creates trust. It creates depth. It creates the kind of connection that most people never experience because they're too afraid to hold the gaze long enough to let it happen. So here's your practice. For the next week, make eye contact with everyone you speak to. Hold it 3 seconds longer than feels comfortable. Don't look away first. Don't apologize with a smile or a laugh. Just hold it and watch what happens. Watch how people's energy shifts. Watch how they defer to you. Watch how they take you more seriously. Watch how your own confidence grows. Because eye contact is not just about how others see you. It's about how you see yourself. And when you can look anyone in the eye without fear, you start to believe that you are equal to anyone. And belief shapes reality. Always. Chapter 9. Moving like you own the room. Power is not announced. It's assumed. And the fastest way to assume it is through movement. Not fast movement, not loud movement, but deliberate movement. The kind that makes people wonder who you are before you even speak. Because the way you move communicates more than any introduction ever could. It says whether you belong or whether you're hoping no one notices you. Whether you're in control or whether you're reacting. Whether you're a predator or prey. And people decide which one you are in the first 3 seconds. Before you say a word, before you shake a hand, just by watching how you move. Let's break this down. You enter a room, most people rush. They're eager to get to their seat, to avoid awkwardness, to blend in as quickly as possible. And that rush is a confession. It says, I'm uncomfortable. I'm not sure I belong here. I want to disappear. And the moment you move like that, you've lost, because you've signaled that the room controls you, that you're reacting to it rather than commanding it. And people pick up on that instantly. They don't consciously think he's weak, but they feel it, and that feeling dictates how they treat you. Now imagine the opposite. You enter the same room, but this time you pause at the threshold, just for a second. You scan the room, not frantically, calmly, like you're taking inventory, like you're deciding where you want to be. Not where you're allowed to be, where you want to be. And then you move, slowly, deliberately. You don't rush to your seat. You walk like you have all the time in the world. And that walk communicates something completely different. It says, I'm not in a hurry. I'm not uncomfortable. I belong here. And everyone in that room feels it. They might not know your name. They might not know your status. But they know instinctively that you are someone. And that perception is power. So what makes a walk powerful? First, it's slow. Not lazy slow. Deliberate slow. Predators don't sprint unless they're striking. Until then, they conserve energy. They move with economy, with purpose, and that economy signals confidence. It signals that you don't need to rush because you're not afraid of being noticed. You're not trying to sneak by. You're just moving. And people can move around you if they need to, but you're not adjusting your pace for them. Second, it's grounded. Your feet are planted. Your steps are solid. You're not bouncing. You're not shuffling. You're not tiptoeing. You're walking like every step is intentional, like every step is claimed territory. And that grounding makes you seem immovable, like you cannot be pushed, like you cannot be redirected. And immovability is power. Because the world is full of people who are easily swayed, who change direction based on social pressure, who move out of the way to avoid conflict. But not you. You move where you decide to move, and the world adjusts. Third, it's unhurried. This is critical. Rushed movement is reactive movement. It signals that you're responding to external demands, that you're behind, that you're trying to catch up. But unhurried movement is proactive. It signals that you set the pace, that you're not reacting, that you're in control of your own time. And time control is status. High-status people are never in a hurry because they don't serve time. Time serves them. And when you move like that, people assume you're high status, even if you're not, because the performance is indistinguishable from the reality. Now let's talk about space. When you walk, you don't make yourself small. You don't pull your arms in. You don't hunch your shoulders. You take up space. Your arms swing naturally. Your chest is open. Your shoulders are back. And that expansion signals ownership. It says this space is mine, not because I'm entitled, but because I'm taking it. And if you have a problem with that, speak up. But most people won't. They'll just move out of your way, because your energy is telling them they should. And here's the secret. Most of this is not about you. It's about everyone else's perception. You might feel uncomfortable. You might feel like you're faking it. You might feel like everyone can tell you're not as confident as you look. But they can't. They don't see your internal state. They only see your external presentation. And if that presentation is strong, they assume the internals match. They assume you feel exactly as confident as you look, and so they treat you accordingly. And over time, something magical happens. The performance becomes real, because you start believing your own act. You start moving like you own the room, because you've done it enough times that you do. Not legally, but psychologically. And psychological ownership is the only ownership that matters. Let's talk about what not to do. Don't fidget while you move. Don't check your phone. Don't look around nervously. Don't adjust your clothes. Don't touch your face. All of these are signs of discomfort, signs that you're not at ease, signs that you're worried about how you're being perceived. And that worry kills your power, because powerful people don't worry about perception. They create it. So when you walk, your hands are either at your sides or doing something purposeful. Your eyes are focused ahead or scanning calmly. Your face is neutral, and your energy is steady. No nervousness. No self-soothing behaviors. Just movement. Pure, deliberate, grounded movement. Now combine everything. You enter a room. You pause. You scan. You choose your path. You move slowly. You take up space. You don't adjust for others. You don't fidget. You don't rush. You just move. And as you move, the room recalibrates. People glance at you. Some step aside. Some watch longer than necessary. Because you're different. You're not like the others who scurry and hoping not to be noticed. You're like someone who doesn't care whether they're noticed or not. And that indifference is magnetic, because most people are desperate to be seen. But you're just existing. And existence without desperation is power. So here's your assignment. Tomorrow, walk into a room, any room, like you own it. Pause at the entrance. Scan. Choose your path. Move slowly. Take up space, and don't adjust for anyone. Just walk and watch what happens. Watch how people's energy shifts. Watch how they make room. Watch how they treat you differently. Not because you demanded it, but because your movement demanded it. And movement is language, and you just spoke fluently. Chapter 10. The architecture of dominance. Dominance is not loud. It's not aggressive. It's not about forcing your will on others through intimidation or violence. That's not dominance. That's desperation. Real dominance is architectural. It's the structure you build around yourself that makes people want to comply, that makes resistance uncomfortable, that makes yielding feel natural. And once you understand how to build that architecture, you don't need to fight. You don't need to argue. You don't need to convince. You just exist. And people fall in line. The foundation of this architecture is frame. Frame is your reality, your version of how things are, your interpretation of events. And dominance is nothing more than having a stronger frame than everyone else in the room. When your frame is strong, people adopt it. They see the world the way you present it. They accept your version of reality as true. And once they do, they're operating within your framework. Which means you control the conversation, the interaction, the outcome, without ever explicitly demanding control. Let me give you an example. Two people are in a disagreement. One person says you're wrong. The other person defends themselves, explains their position, tries to prove they're right. Who has the stronger frame? The accuser. Because the defender is now operating within the accuser's reality. They've accepted that being wrong is a possibility, that they need to prove themselves, that their position is on trial. And once they accept that frame, they've lost, because now they're defending. And defense is always weaker than offense. Now, imagine the same scenario. One person says you're wrong. The other person just looks at them and says, I disagree, and then stops talking. No defense. No explanation. No attempt to convince. Just a flat statement followed by silence. Who has the stronger frame now? The second person, because they didn't accept the premise. They didn't enter the accuser's reality. They created their own, and by refusing to defend, they communicated something powerful. I don't need you to agree with me. My reality stands regardless of your opinion, and that refusal to engage is devastating, because it signals that your frame is impenetrable. So the first rule of dominance is this: never defend your frame. State it and move on. Because the moment you defend, you're implying that your frame is weak, that it needs support, that it's up for debate. But if your frame is strong, it doesn't need defense. It just is, and people either accept it or they leave. And either way, you win. Because you didn't compromise, you didn't bend. You didn't adjust your reality to accommodate theirs. You held your ground, and holding ground is power. The second element of the architecture is certainty. Certainty is the material your frame is built with, and the more certain you are, the stronger your frame becomes. Not certainty in being right, but certainty in your position. Even if you're wrong, if you're certain, people will follow you, because humans are hardwired to follow certainty. It's a survival mechanism. In a crisis, we don't follow the smartest person. we follow the most certain person, because certainty feels like safety, and safety is what people crave more than truth. So how do you project certainty? You remove all doubt from your language. You stop using hedging words. Maybe, possibly, I think, kind of. All of these words weaken your frame. They introduce doubt, and doubt is frame breaking. So you eliminate them. You speak in declarations. This is how it is. This is what we're doing. This is the direction. And you say it like it's a fact, not an opinion, a fact. And when you do, something interesting happens. People stop questioning, because your certainty makes them question their own doubts. And when their doubts start to waver, your frame wins. The third element is emotional control. This is the walls of your architecture, because if your emotions are controllable, your frame is weak. Someone insults you and you get angry, your frame just cracked. Someone praises you and you light up, your frame is reactive. Someone ignores you and you seek their attention, your frame is dependent. But if none of these things move you, if you remain steady regardless of what they do, your frame becomes unbreakable, because they can't find leverage. They can't manipulate you. They can't shake you. And when they can't shake you, they stop trying. And once they stop trying, they submit. So how do you build emotional control? You stop reacting. Someone insults you, you don't argue. You don't explain. You either ignore it completely, or you acknowledge it with complete indifference. Okay, if you say so, I disagree. Short, final, no emotion. And that non-reaction is more devastating than any comeback, because you've communicated that their attack had no impact, that you are unmoved, that you are not playing the game they're trying to play, and people don't know what to do with that. So they stop. The fourth element is scarcity. Scarcity is the roof of your architecture, because if you're too available, your frame collapses. Availability signals low value. It signals that you don't have better options, that you're waiting for them, that you need them, and need is weakness. But scarcity signals the opposite. It signals that your time is valuable, that access to you is limited, that you have other priorities, and people respect scarcity. They value what's rare, and when you make yourself scarce, you become valuable by default. So how do you create scarcity? You stop being available all the time. You don't answer immediately. You don't explain where you were. You don't apologize for your absence. You just exist on your own timeline. And if people want access to you, they adjust their timeline to yours, not the other way around, because you're the center of your architecture, and everything revolves around you, not because you demand it, but because you've structured it that way, and structure is dominance. Now let's combine all of this. You have a strong frame. You never defend it. You speak with certainty. You remain emotionally controlled. You are selectively available. And what you've built is a fortress that people can enter only on your terms. And once they're inside, they're operating by your rules, your reality, your frame, and they don't even realize it, because you never forced them. You just made it easier to comply than to resist. And that is the highest form of power. Not the power to force, but the power to make people want to follow. And once you build that architecture, you don't need anything else. because everyone else is already building around you. Chapter 11. Weaponizing your absence. Presence is powerful, but absence is more powerful. Because presence is expected, absence is felt. When you're there, people take you for granted. When you're gone, they notice the void. And that void creates desire, because humans only value what they risk losing. And if you never give them the chance to lose you, they'll never appreciate having you. But when you disappear, when you withdraw strategically, suddenly you become the most important person in the room. Even when you're not in it, this is the paradox of power. The more available you are, the less valuable you become. The more you show up, the less they appreciate your presence. The more you give, the more they expect. And eventually, you become invisible. Not because they don't care, but because you've trained them that you'll always be there. And what's always there becomes background noise. It stops being noticed. It stops being valued. And you stop having leverage. So the solution is simple but brutal. You must be willing to disappear, not out of spite, not out of manipulation, but out of self-respect. Because if your presence is not valued, your absence will teach them its worth. And if they still don't value it, then you've learned something critical. They were never worth your time in the first place. And now you can move on without regret, because you gave them a chance to realize your value, and they failed the test. Let's talk about how this works. Someone takes you for granted. They expect you to always be available, always helpful, always accommodating, and you are, because you want to be kind. You want to be supportive. You want to be valued. But here's the truth. Being available doesn't make you valued. It makes you expected. And expected is not respected. Expected is exploited. So what do? You withdraw. No explanation. No announcement. No emotional farewell. You just stop being available. You stop answering immediately. You stop showing up. You stop accommodating. And you watch what happens. At first, nothing. They might not even notice, because they're used to you being there. But then, after a few days, the absence registers. They reach out, and you don't respond. Or you respond briefly and uninterested. And that brief, disinterested response is a message. It says, I'm no longer prioritizing you. I'm no longer making you central to my life. You've been downgraded. And most people will panic, not consciously, but they'll feel the shift. And that shift creates urgency, because now they're afraid. Afraid that they've lost access. Afraid that they've lost influence. Afraid that they've lost you, and that fear is your leverage. Because now they're operating from a deficit. They're trying to win you back. They're trying to prove they care. They're trying to re-establish the connection. And you don't have to do anything. You just stay scarce. You let them chase. You let them wonder. You let them feel what it's like when you're not there. And in that feeling, they realize something they should have realized long ago. You added value. You made things easier. You brought something to their life that they took for granted. And now that it's gone, they want it back. But here's the critical part. You don't come back easily. If you come back the moment they reach out, you've wasted the entire maneuver. You've shown them that your absence was just a bluff, that you were waiting for them to notice, that you need them as much as they need you, and you're back to square one. So you stay gone longer than feels comfortable. You let them sweat. You let them miss you. You let them prove that they value you. And only when they've demonstrated that value consistently do you gradually reappear. And when you do, the dynamic has shifted. They're no longer taking you for granted, because they remember what it felt like when you were gone. Now let's talk about the other outcome. You disappear, and they don't notice, or they notice and don't care, or they're relieved you're gone. What does that tell you? It tells you everything. It tells you that the relationship was one-sided, that you were giving far more than you were receiving, that your value was never appreciated because they never had to work for it. And now you know. And knowledge is freedom, because now you can stop wasting time on someone who doesn't deserve it. You can reinvest that energy into people and pursuits that actually value you. And that reinvestment is where your real power grows. But here's the deeper lesson. Absence is not just a tactic. It's a test. It separates the people who genuinely value you from the people who just benefited from your presence. And most people will fall into the second category, because most relationships are transactional. People stay around as long as you provide value, and the moment you stop, they leave, and that's fine, because you don't want people in your life who only stay for what you give them. You want people who stay for who you are, and the only way to find those people is to stop giving, stop performing, stop being available, and see who reaches out when there's nothing in it for them. Those people are worth keeping. Everyone else is just background noise. So here's your practice. Identify one relationship where you feel taken for granted and disappear from it. No drama, no explanation. Just stop being available and watch what happens. Do they notice? Do they care? Do they reach out? And if they do, how much effort do they put in? Because effort is respect. And if they're not willing to put in effort, they don't respect you. And people who don't respect you don't deserve your presence. So stay gone and invest that time in yourself. Because the most important person who needs to value your presence is you. And once you do, once you realize that your absence is more powerful than your presence, everything changes. Because now you're no longer giving yourself away. You're making people earn you, and earning creates value. And value creates power. And power is what you've been chasing all along. Chapter 12. Rejection as intelligence. Rejection hurts. That's a fact. But that doesn't mean it should stop you. And it definitely doesn't mean it defines you. Because rejection is not personal. It's positional. People reject what they believe they can survive without. So if someone said no to you, it doesn't mean you're worthless. It means they believe they lost nothing. And that belief is not fact. It's just their perception. And perceptions can be changed, but only if you use rejection correctly, not as a wound, but as intelligence, as data, as fuel. Think about the last time you were rejected. A job, a relationship, a social group. What did you do? If you're like most people, you internalized it. You told yourself a story about why you weren't good enough. You questioned your value. You spiraled into self-doubt. And that self-doubt made you smaller, weaker, more hesitant. And in that diminishment, you confirmed their rejection. Not because you were actually less valuable, but because you behaved like you were. And behavior shapes perception. Always. Now imagine a different response. You get rejected. And instead of internalizing it, you analyze it. What did this rejection tell you? That you weren't the right fit, that your value wasn't apparent to them, that they weren't able to see what you bring. And none of those things are about you. They're about them, about their priorities, their perceptions, their limitations. So rejection becomes information. Information about who can see your value and who can't. And people who can't see your value are not your audience. They're not your market. They're not your people. So why would you waste time trying to convince them? This is the mindset shift that changes everything. Rejection is not defeat. It's filtering. It's the world showing you who is not aligned with you, who is not capable of appreciating you, who is not worth your time. And that information is valuable, because now you can stop wasting energy on people who will never get it, and start investing in people who do, or better yet, in yourself, because the best revenge is not proving them wrong. It's becoming so successful that their rejection becomes irrelevant. So how do you turn rejection into intelligence? First, you remove emotion from the equation. When you're rejected, your first instinct is to feel hurt. And that's fine. Feel it. But don't live in it. Because emotions are temporary, but decisions based on emotions are permanent. So you feel the sting, and then you move into analysis. Why were you rejected? Was it skill, timing, fit, perception? And once you identify the reason, you ask, is this something I can improve, or is this something I can't control? If you can improve it, great. You've just identified a growth area. If you can't control it, even better. You've just identified a filter, a way to separate people who will value you from people who won't. Second, you withdraw your presence. This is critical. The moment you're rejected, you disappear. Not out of bitterness, but out of strategy. Because staying around after rejection is weak. It signals that you're hoping they'll change their mind, that you're still available, that you're still seeking their approval. And seeking approval after rejection is desperate. And desperation destroys value. So you vanish, you stop reaching out, you stop explaining, you stop trying. And in that absence, something interesting happens. They start to wonder, did I make the right choice? Was I too hasty? What if I missed something? And that doubt is your leverage, because now they're questioning themselves, and questioning is the first step toward regret. Third, you upgrade yourself. This is the most important step. You take the energy you would have spent chasing their approval, and you invest it in becoming undeniable. You improve your skills. You expand your network. You build your reputation. You become so visibly successful that they can't avoid seeing it. And when they do, they'll realize something painful. They had access to you before you became this, and they said no. And now you're out of reach. And that realization is more painful than any revenge you could have plotted, because it's self-inflicted. They rejected you when you were available, and now that you're valuable, you're unavailable. Not because you're holding a grudge, but because you've moved on. And moving on is power. Fourth, you reframe the narrative. Rejection only has power if you accept their frame. If you accept that being rejected means you weren't good enough. But what if you flip it? What if their rejection means they weren't good enough to recognize your value? What if it means they failed the test of discernment? What if it means you dodged a bullet by not being connected to someone who couldn't see your worth? When you reframe rejection this way, it stops being a wound. It becomes a filter, a way for the world to separate people who belong in your life from people who don't. And filters are useful because they save you time, energy, heartache, and they direct you toward the people who will actually appreciate you. Fifth, you weaponize your return. Not immediately, not obviously, but eventually. You come back into their awareness, not because you sought them out, but because your success made it impossible for them to ignore you. You're thriving, you're visible, you're undeniable, and they see it, and they feel something they weren't expecting, regret, because now they realize what they passed on. And if they reach out, if they try to reconnect, you don't slam the door, but you don't fling it open either. You make them work for it. You make them prove that they've learned, that they see your value now, and if they can't prove it, you move on, because your time is too valuable to waste on people who needed you to become undeniable before they noticed you were valuable. So here's your assignment. Think about the last rejection that hurt, and ask yourself, what did it teach me? What did it reveal about them? What did it force me to improve? And what did it filter out of my life? And once you have those answers, you'll realize something powerful. That rejection wasn't a setback. It was a setup for the next version of you. The one who doesn't need their approval, the one who doesn't chase validation, the one who is too busy building to care, who said no. And that version is dangerous because it's unchained, and unchained people are unstoppable. Part 3, Becoming Untouchable, Chapter 13. The Fortress Mind. You can master your walk, your voice, your presence, your strategy, but if your mind is still vulnerable, you're not powerful. You're just performing. Because true power is not external. It's internal. It's having a mind that cannot be shaken, cannot be manipulated, cannot be broken. A mind that processes attacks without reacting, that absorbs criticism without crumbling, that faces rejection without internalizing. A mind that is, in every sense, untouchable. Most people live at the mercy of their emotions. Someone insults them and they're angry for days. Someone praises them and they're floating. Someone ignores them and they spiral into self-doubt. And that emotional volatility is weakness, because it means external forces control your internal state. It means other people have power over you. It means you're not free. You're just reacting. And reacting is the opposite of ruling. So how do you build a fortress mind? You start by understanding that emotions are real but irrelevant. You feel anger. Fine, feel it, but don't act on it. You feel hurt. Okay, acknowledge it, but don't let it dictate your decisions. You feel insecure. Sure, notice it, but don't let it stop you. Because feelings are temporary. They come and go like weather. But your identity, your decisions, your direction, those should be permanent. And if you let temporary emotions dictate permanent choices, you will always be unstable. You will always be controllable. You will always be weak. The first rule of the fortress mind is this: separate feeling from action. You can feel everything, but you act on nothing unless it serves your outcome. Someone insults you. You feel anger, but you don't lash out, because lashing out gives them what they want. It shows them they got to you. It reveals your vulnerability. So instead, you observe the anger, you note it, and then you decide, is responding useful? Will it advance my position? Or will it just make me feel better for 5 minutes? If it's the latter, you do nothing. You let the insult land in silence. And that silence is more devastating than any comeback, because it says you didn't affect me. You're not worth my energy. And that dismissiveness is power. The second rule is this: never explain your emotional state. The moment you explain, you're defending, you're justifying, you're seeking understanding. And seeking understanding is giving others control over your internal world, because now they know what you're feeling. And what they know, they can exploit. So when someone asks, why are you upset? You don't explain. You say, I'm not, even if you are, because your emotions are not public property. They're private intelligence. And you don't share intelligence with people who haven't earned it. The third rule is this: control your reactions. Most people react immediately. Someone provokes them and they snap. Someone praises them and they glow. Someone tests them and they respond defensively. And every one of those reactions is predictable. And predictable is controllable. So you break the pattern. Someone provokes you, you don't snap, you pause, you let them finish. And then you respond with something calm, measured, and final. Or you don't respond at all, because your reaction is your choice, not their trigger. Now let's talk about what this looks like in practice. You're in a meeting. Someone undermines you in front of others. Old you would have defended, would have explained, would have tried to salvage your image. But Fortress, you does something different. You pause, you look at them, and you say something short. Interesting perspective, or I disagree, or nothing at all. And then you move on. You don't revisit it. You don't address it later. You just move on. And in that moving on, you've communicated something powerful. You are not affected. You are not threatened. You are not playing the game they're trying to start. And that refusal to engage is dominance. Or someone praises you publicly. They want to see you react. They want to see you light up, become grateful, maybe even become indebted. But you don't. You acknowledge it briefly. Thank you, and you move on. No elaboration, no reciprocation, no emotional display, and that restraint is unsettling because they expected a reaction, and you gave them nothing. And in that nothing, you've maintained control, because now they don't know how to manipulate you. Praise doesn't work. Criticism doesn't work. Ignoring doesn't work. You're unreachable. The fourth rule is this: train your mind to process, not react. When something happens, don't immediately assign meaning. Don't immediately judge it as good or bad, fair or unfair, deserved or undeserved. Just observe it. What happened? Why did it happen? What does it reveal? What can I learn from it? This is processing, and processing keeps you calm, because you're not in the emotion, you're in the analysis. And analysis is power, because it gives you options. React emotionally, and you have one option. Whatever your emotion dictates. Process analytically, and you have multiple options. Respond, ignore, redirect, leverage, destroy, and options are freedom. The fifth rule is this: build your identity independent of external validation. Most people's sense of self is tied to how others see them. If people respect them, they feel valuable. If people reject them, they feel worthless. And that dependence is slavery, because it means other people control your self-worth. But fortress minds don't work that way. They have an internal standard, a standard that says, I know who I am, I know what I'm worth, and your opinion doesn't change that. It might inform it, but it doesn't define it. And when you reach that level of self-knowledge, external validation becomes irrelevant. You don't need it. You don't chase it. You don't change yourself to get it. You just are. And that being is uncheckable. So how do you build this? You start by auditing your emotional triggers. What makes you angry? What makes you insecure? What makes you react? Write it down, and then ask, why does this trigger me? What belief is underneath it? And is that belief true? And can I function without that belief? Most triggers are based on false beliefs. I must be liked. I must be right. I must be respected. But none of those things are necessities. They're preferences. And when you realize their preferences, they lose power, because you can survive without them, and survival without them is freedom. Next, you practice emotional delay. When something triggers you, don't react. Wait. Count 10. Count to 100 if you need to. Just delay the reaction. And in that delay, the emotion will often fade, or at least diminish. And what remains is clarity, and clarity is what you act on, not emotion. Clarity. And clarity-based action is always superior to emotion-based reaction. Always. Finally, you build evidence of your own resilience. Every time you face a challenge and don't break, you're building proof. Proof that you're tougher than you thought. Proof that you can handle more than you assumed. Proof that you are, in fact, becoming untouchable. And that proof becomes your foundation, the foundation of a fortress mind, a mind that no one can breach. No one can manipulate. No one can control, because you've locked the gates, and only you hold the key. Chapter 14. Emotional Unreachability. Being untouchable doesn't mean being emotionless. It means being unreachable. There's a difference. Emotionless is robotic. It's cold in a way that repels, but unreachable is cold in a way that attracts. Because unreachable means you feel everything, but you're controlled by nothing. You experience anger, but it doesn't make you reckless. You experience hurt, but it doesn't make you weak. You experience desire, but it doesn't make you desperate. And that control, that ability to feel without being ruled by feeling, is the ultimate form of power. Most people are emotional puppets. Pull the right string and they dance. Insult them and they attack. Praise them and they soften. Ignore them and they chase. They are predictable, and predictable is exploitable. But when you become emotionally unreachable, those strings don't work anymore. People pull and nothing happens. They push and you don't budge. They try to manipulate and you just stare. And that inability to move you makes them afraid, because they realize you're different. You're not like everyone else who can be controlled through emotion. You're separate, elevated, untouchable. So how do you become emotionally unreachable? You start by killing the need to be understood. This is the root of emotional vulnerability, the belief that people should understand your intentions, your reasons, your feelings. And when they don't, you feel compelled to explain, to defend, to justify, but that compulsion is a weakness, because it means you need their understanding to feel okay. And need is always weakness, so you kill it. You accept that most people will misunderstand you, and you're okay with that, because their understanding is not required for you to move forward. Their approval is not required for you to be valuable. Their interpretation is not required for you to be right. You exist independent of their perception, and that independence is power. The second step is killing the fear of rejection. This is another root vulnerability. The fear that if you're fully yourself, people will reject you. So you moderate. You soften. You hide parts of yourself to stay acceptable. And in that hiding, you become a performance. And performances are exhausting. And performances are fake. And fake never commands real respect. So you stop hiding. You show up fully. You say what you think. You do what you want. You set boundaries without apology. And yes, some people will reject you. But here's the secret. Those people were never for you anyway. They were for the version of you that you were pretending to be. And that version doesn't exist. So their rejection is meaningless because they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting a ghost. And ghosts don't care about rejection. The third step is killing the habit of reacting. Reaction is automatic. Someone says something and you respond immediately. Someone does something and you react emotionally. And that immediacy is vulnerability, because it shows that they control your responses, that they dictate your emotional state, that you are, in a very real sense, their puppet. So you introduce delay. Someone says something provocative, you don't respond, you let it sit. You let them wonder. You let the silence grow uncomfortable. And then, when you do respond, it's measured. It's calm. It's deliberate. And that deliberateness communicates something critical. I am not controlled by you. I respond on my timeline, not yours. And that timeline shift is power. Now let's talk about what emotional unreachability looks like in practice. Someone insults you. Old, you would have felt a sting, would have responded defensively, would have tried to prove them wrong. But unreachable, you does something different. You hear the insult. You acknowledge it internally. And then you analyze, why are they saying this? What do they want from me? What are they afraid of? And in that analysis, the insult becomes data. It's not about you, it's about them. And once you see that, the insult loses its sting, because it was never about you. It was always about their need to feel superior, their fear of being inferior, their attempt to control you through emotional manipulation. And now that you see the game, you stop playing. You just observe. And observing is always more powerful than playing. Or someone tries to guilt you. They say things like, I thought you cared, or you're being selfish, or I expected better from you. And those words are designed to trigger shame, to make you feel bad, to make you comply. But unreachable, you sees through it. You recognize guilt as manipulation, and manipulation as weakness. So you don't engage with the guilt. You don't apologize. You don't explain. You just reaffirm your position. I'm not changing my mind, or I'm comfortable with my decision, or I understand you're disappointed. And that reaffirmation is devastating, because it shows that their emotional leverage doesn't work, that you are not moved by guilt, that you are, in fact, immune to their manipulation. Or someone tries to provoke you with silence. They ignore you, they withdraw. They give you the cold shoulder, and that silence is designed to make you chase, to make you anxious, to make you apologize for something you didn't do. But unreachable you doesn't chase. You match their silence. You give them space. You continue living your life as if nothing changed. And that indifference is powerful, because it shows that their absence doesn't affect you, that you're not dependent on their attention, that you're fine without them. And when they realize that ignoring you doesn't work, they come back, or they don't, and either way, you win. Because you didn't need them to come back. You were already whole without them. This is the power of emotional unreachability. It makes you unmanipulable. People can't guilt you, can't provoke you, can't control you, because all their usual tactics fail. And when their tactics fail, they have two options: respect you or leave you. And both outcomes are acceptable, because respect is what you wanted. And people who can't respect you are people you don't need. So their leaving is not a loss. It's a filter. It's the world removing people who weren't aligned with you, and that removal is a gift. So here's your practice. Identify one person who manipulates you emotionally, and stop responding to their manipulation. They guilt you? Don't apologize. They provoke you? Don't react. They ignore you? Don't chase. Just stay emotionally neutral and watch what happens. They'll escalate at first because their tactics aren't working, but eventually they'll stop because they'll realize you're unreachable. And unreachable people are not worth manipulating, because manipulation only works when the target is emotionally vulnerable, and you're not. Not anymore. Chapter 15. The power of indifference. Indifference is the final boss of emotional mastery. It's not hatred. Hatred still cares. It's not anger. Anger still reacts. It's not bitterness. Bitterness still holds on. Indifference is complete emotional detachment. It's looking at someone or something that once mattered and feeling nothing. No pull. No repulsion. Just nothing. And that nothing is the ultimate power. Because when you're indifferent, you cannot be controlled. Not by love, not by hate, not by fear, not by desire. You're just free. Most people think indifference is cold, that it's heartless, that it's the mark of someone who doesn't care about anything. But that's not what indifference is. Indifference is selective. It's not about caring about nothing. It's about caring only about what deserves your care. And most things don't. Most people don't. Most situations don't. Most opinions don't. And when you realize that 90% of what demands your emotional energy is not worth it, you become free. Free to invest that energy into the 10% that actually matters. So how do you develop indifference? You start by identifying what doesn't matter. Write it down. Other people's opinions of you. Doesn't matter. Someone's approval? Doesn't matter. Whether you're liked? Doesn't matter. Whether someone respects you? Only matters if there's someone you respect. And most people aren't, so their respect is worthless. And when you truly internalize that their respect is worthless, you stop seeking it. And when you stop seeking it, you become indifferent to whether you have it. The second step is practicing non-response. Indifference is not about suppressing your reaction. It's about genuinely not having one. And the only way to develop that is through practice. Someone says something designed to trigger you, and you just let it pass. You don't engage. You don't argue. You don't defend. You don't even acknowledge it internally as important. You just let it exist in the space and move on. And the more you practice this, the easier it becomes. Because you're training your brain that not everything requires a response. That most things are just noise. And noise doesn't deserve your attention. The third step is reframing value. Most people overvalue approval and undervalue autonomy. They would rather be liked by people they don't respect than be themselves and risk rejection. And that trade-off is insane, because approval from people you don't respect is worthless. But autonomy, the freedom to be yourself without concern for others' opinions, that's priceless. So you reframe. You stop measuring your worth by how many people like you, and you start measuring it by how free you are. And freedom means indifference. Indifference to approval. Indifference to rejection. Indifference to judgment. And once you achieve that indifference, you're untouchable. Now let's talk about what indifference does to other people. It unsettles them. Because humans are hardwired to care about each other's opinions. So when they encounter someone who doesn't, it's confusing. It's threatening. They don't know how to categorize you. Are you arrogant? Are you cold? Are you superior? And because they can't figure it out, they become fixated. They start paying more attention to you. They start trying to get a reaction. They start testing you, and all of that attention is power, because you didn't ask for it, you didn't chase it. You just existed in a state of indifference, and that indifference created attraction, because people want what doesn't want them. But here's the nuance. Indifference is not universal. You're not indifferent to everything. You're selectively indifferent. You care deeply about your goals, your values, your mission, the people who have earned your respect, but everything else, indifferent. And that selectivity is what makes your care valuable, because when you do care, people know it means something. They know you don't give your attention freely. So when you give it to them, it's significant. And significance creates loyalty, because they realize they have something rare, something most people don't get, and they don't want to lose it. So how do you practice indifference? You start small. Someone makes a comment designed to get a reaction, and you don't give it. You just nod or say okay and move on. Someone seeks your approval, and you don't give it. You just stay neutral. Someone tries to provoke you, and you don't engage. You just let it pass. And every time you successfully remain indifferent, you're building the habit. You're rewiring your brain. You're teaching yourself that most things are not worth your emotional energy. And that teaching becomes permanent. And here's what will happen. Over time, you'll notice that fewer and fewer things bother you, that you're less reactive, less defensive, less needy, and people will notice too. They'll comment on how you've changed, how you're different, how you don't seem to care anymore. And they're right. You don't. Not about the things that don't matter. And that not caring is your superpower, because it makes you immovable, unmanipulable, untouchable. And once you're untouchable, you're free. Free to build. Free to grow. Free to become the version of yourself that you were always meant to be. Without interference. Without approval. Without permission. Just free. Chapter 16. Turning attacks into advantage attacks will come. That's not a possibility. It's a guarantee. The moment you start rising, the moment you start standing out, the moment you start threatening the status quo, people will come for you. They'll criticize. They'll undermine. They'll spread rumors. They'll try to tear you down. And how you respond to those attacks determines whether you rise or fall. Because attacks are not setbacks. They're opportunities. Opportunities to demonstrate your strength, to showcase your character, to separate yourself from everyone else who crumbles under pressure. And when you learn to turn attacks into advantage, you become unstoppable. Most people respond to attacks emotionally. They get defensive. They argue. They try to clear their name. They seek vindication. And all of that is weak, because it shows that the attack affected you, that you care what they think, that you're still operating from a place of needing approval. And need is always weakness. So instead of defending, you do something different. You observe, you analyze, you extract value, and then you move forward stronger than before. The first rule is this: never defend publicly. When someone attacks you publicly, your instinct is to respond publicly, to set the record straight, to make sure everyone knows the truth. But public defense is weak, because it signals that you care about their opinion, that their attack threatened your position, that you need to explain yourself. An explanation is always submission, so you don't defend. You either ignore completely or you respond with something brief and dismissive. I disagree, not interested in this conversation. Moving on. And that brevity is powerful, because it shows that their attack didn't land, that you're unmoved, that you're not playing the game they're trying to start. The second rule is this: use attacks as marketing. This sounds counterintuitive, but attacks, especially public ones, are visibility. They're free marketing, because now people are talking about you. They're paying attention. They're curious. And attention is the most valuable resource in the modern world. So instead of trying to shut down the attack, you let it run. You let people talk. You let the controversy build. And while they're busy attacking, you're busy building. And when the dust settles, people remember two things: the attack happened, and you didn't break. And that resilience is what builds legends. The third rule is this: extract the lesson. Every attack contains information. Information about your enemies, about your weaknesses, about your blind spots. So you analyze. What did they attack? Why did they choose that angle? What does it reveal about what they fear? And what does it reveal about what you need to strengthen? Maybe they attacked your credibility. That tells you to build more proof. Maybe they attacked your character. That tells you to be more careful about who you trust. Maybe they attacked your appearance. That tells you they have nothing substantial to attack. And that's actually good news. Because if they're resorting to personal attacks, it means your work is solid. And solid work is what builds empires. The fourth rule is this: respond with results, not words. Words are cheap. Results are expensive. So when someone attacks you, don't waste energy responding with words. Respond with action. Build something. Win something. Achieve something, and let that achievement be your response. Because results are undeniable. They're objective. They can't be argued with. And when you respond to an attack with a victory, you don't just defend yourself, you dominate. Because now the conversation shifts. It's no longer about the attack. It's about what you accomplished while they were busy attacking. And accomplishment always wins. The fifth rule is this: stay emotionally neutral. This is the hardest part, because attacks feel personal. They feel like assaults on your character, on your worth, on your identity. And that feeling wants to pull you into reactivity, into defensiveness, into emotion. But you can't go there, because the moment you react emotionally, you lose. You lose composure, you lose credibility, you lose control. So you train yourself to see attacks as information, not insults, as moves in a game, not judgments of your soul. And in that reframing, you stay calm, you stay focused, you stay powerful. Now let's talk about what this looks like in practice. Someone attacks you online. They write something harsh, something unfair, something designed to provoke. Old you would have responded immediately, would have defended, would have argued. But new you does something different. You screenshot it, you save it, and you say nothing, or you respond with something brief and indifferent. And then you go back to work, you build, you create, you achieve. And months later, when you've accomplished something significant, you share it. And in that sharing, the attack is forgotten, because people don't remember attacks. They remember outcomes. And your outcome is victory, so the attack becomes irrelevant. Or someone attacks you in person. They challenge you publicly. They try to embarrass you. They try to make you look weak. And everyone is watching to see how you respond. Old you would have fought back, would have tried to save face. But new you does something different. You pause. You look at them calmly, and you say something simple. You're entitled to your opinion, or I don't see it that way, and then you move on. No elaboration, no defense, no emotion. Just a simple statement followed by silence. And in that silence, something shifts, because you didn't take the bait. You didn't give them the fight they wanted. You stayed calm. You stayed composed. And composure in the face of attack is dominance, always. So here's your practice. The next time someone attacks you, don't respond immediately. Wait. Let 24 hours pass. And in those 24 hours, analyze. What are they really attacking? What are they afraid of? What lesson can you extract? And what result can you create that makes the attack irrelevant? And then create that result. And let the result be your only response. Because results don't argue. They just are. And when you master the art of turning attacks into advantage, you become undefeatable. Not because you're never attacked, but because attacks fuel you rather than break you. And fuel is what winners run on. Chapter 17. The legend you leave, you will be forgotten. That's a fact. Everyone is. The question is, how long does it take? And what do people remember when they remember you? Because that's what matters. Not whether you were liked, not whether you were popular, but whether you were memorable, whether you left an impression so strong that people couldn't forget you even if they wanted to. And that impression, that legend, is built through every decision you make, every interaction you have, every moment you choose power over comfort. And by the time you're done reading this book, you'll know exactly how to build a legend that lasts. Legends are not built through perfection. They're built through consistency. Consistent behavior that signals unwavering values. Consistent standards that never bend for convenience. Consistent presence that people can count on. And when you are consistent, you become predictable in the best way. People know what you stand for. They know what you won't tolerate. They know that you are the same whether they're watching or not. And that sameness, that integrity, is what makes legends. Because legends are not people who change with the wind. They're people who stay the same when everyone else is shifting. The first element of a legend is silence. Legends don't explain themselves. They don't justify. They don't seek understanding. They just do, and people interpret. And different people interpret differently, and that ambiguity is power, because when you don't explain, people project onto you. They fill in the gaps with their own assumptions, and those assumptions are always more favorable than the truth, because the truth is mundane, but assumptions are mythical. So you stay silent. You let them wonder. You let them speculate. And in that speculation, your legend grows, because legends are always bigger than the people who inspire them. The second element is mystery. Legends are not fully known. They don't share everything. They don't post every moment. They don't explain every decision. They keep parts of themselves hidden. And that hidden part is what makes people curious, what makes them want to know more, what makes them obsess. Because humans are drawn to mystery. We want to solve it. We want to understand it. And when we can't, we keep thinking about it. So you become mysterious. Not by lying, not by pretending, but by simply not sharing everything. By keeping your cards close, by letting people see only what you choose to show. And that selective revelation is what builds intrigue. The third element is results. Legends are not just people who talk. They're people who deliver, who achieve, who build, who create tangible outcomes that can't be denied. So you focus on results. You don't announce your plans. You don't promise what you'll do. You just do it. And then you show the outcome. And outcomes speak louder than intentions. Always. Because intentions are cheap. Everyone has them. But outcomes are rare. And rare is valuable. So you become someone who produces. Consistently. Reliably. Undeniably. And that production becomes your signature, the thing people remember you for, the thing that makes you unforgettable. The fourth element is standards. Legends have standards that don't bend. They don't compromise their values for convenience. They don't lower their expectations to fit in. They don't tolerate disrespect just to keep the peace. They have a line. And everyone knows where that line is. And everyone knows that crossing it has consequences. And that boundary creates respect. Because people respect those who respect themselves. And self-respect is non-negotiable. So you set your standards. And you enforce them. Without apology. Without exception. And people will either meet them or leave. And both outcomes are acceptable, because your standards are not up for debate. The fifth element is indifference to approval. Legends don't chase. They don't seek validation. They don't need to be liked. They just exist, and that existence is enough, because their value is intrinsic. It doesn't depend on external recognition. It doesn't waver when criticized. It doesn't inflate when praised. It just is. And that stability is magnetic. Because in a world full of people desperate for approval, someone who doesn't need it stands out. They're different. They're rare. They're powerful. And power attracts, not because it seeks, but because it doesn't have to. So how do you build your legend? You start now with this conversation, with this decision. You decide that from this moment forward you are no longer playing small. You are no longer seeking approval. You are no longer explaining yourself. You are just becoming the version of yourself that people remember, the version that doesn't apologize for existing, the version that moves through the world with such certainty that people can't help but notice. And that noticing, repeated over and over through consistent action, becomes your legend. And your legend outlives you, because legends don't die. They just become stories. And stories are how humans remember what matters. So become a story worth telling. Become a legend worth remembering. And start today. Chapter 18. You are the weapon. This is the final truth, the ultimate realization. You don't need weapons. You don't need tools. You don't need strategies, because you are the weapon. Your presence is the weapon. Your silence is the weapon. Your walk is the weapon. Your stare is the weapon. Your indifference is the weapon. Everything about you, when refined, when sharpened, when weaponized through conscious practice, becomes a force that cannot be stopped, cannot be denied, cannot be ignored. And that is what this entire book has been building toward. Not making you more likable, not making you more comfortable, but making you dangerous in the best possible way. Dangerous doesn't mean violent. It means formidable. It means someone who cannot be easily dismissed, cannot be easily controlled, cannot be easily forgotten. It means you have edges. You have boundaries. You have standards. And those things create friction. And friction creates respect. Because people respect what they cannot easily manipulate, what they cannot easily predict, what they cannot easily discard. And when you become that, when you become the weapon, you stop being a victim of circumstances. You become the circumstance. You stop reacting to the world. You become the force the world reacts to. And that shift is everything. So how do you embody this? You start by accepting that softness is over. Not kindness, softness. The willingness to bend when you should stand. To shrink when you should expand. To apologize when you did nothing wrong. That softness served you when you were weak. But you're not weak anymore. You're sharpened. You're honed. You're refined. And refinement has edges. So you stop rounding yourself off to make others comfortable. You stay sharp, and sharp cuts through resistance. Sharp commands attention. Sharp cannot be ignored. You embody this through your walk. You don't shuffle. You stride. You don't rush. You move deliberately. You don't look down. You scan. You don't make room for everyone. You take your space, and people adjust to you. Not because you demanded it, but because your energy demands it. Because you're walking like someone who owns not just the room, but themselves. And self-ownership is the foundation of all power. You embody this through your voice. You don't ask. You state. You don't hedge. You declare. You don't seek agreement. You present reality, and people can accept it or reject it, but they can't change it, because you're not negotiating. You're informing, and informing from a place of certainty is how rulers speak. And rulers are followed, even when people disagree, because certainty is leadership, and people follow certainty even when it's wrong. So imagine how powerful certainty is when it's right. You embody this through your emotional control. You feel everything. But you're controlled by nothing. You're angry, but you don't lash out. You're hurt, but you don't break. You're insulted, but you don't defend. You process. You observe. You extract the lesson, and then you move forward, unchanged, unshaken, unstoppable. And that emotional steadiness is terrifying, because it means manipulation doesn't work. Provocation doesn't work. Guilt doesn't work. Nothing works. You're unreachable. And unreachable people cannot be controlled, cannot be used, cannot be discarded. They can only be respected or avoided. And both outcomes are power. You embody this through your standards. You have lines, and everyone knows where they are, and everyone knows what happens when they're crossed. And that clarity creates order. People know where they stand with you. They know what's acceptable and what's not. They know that you don't make exceptions, that you don't bend for convenience, that you are the same today as you were yesterday and will be tomorrow. And that consistency is rare, and rare is valuable, and valuable commands respect. So your standards become your identity, and your identity becomes your legend. Now here's the final command. Everything you've read in this book is useless unless you act. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. And you're not here to be entertained. You're here to transform, to become dangerous, to become the weapon. So you take one thing from this book. Just one. Maybe it's the walk. Maybe it's the silence. Maybe it's the emotional control. Maybe it's the indifference. Just one thing. And you implement it today, not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready, today, and you practice it until it becomes automatic, until it becomes you. And then you take the next thing, and the next, and piece by piece you rebuild yourself, not from scratch, but from strength, into something sharper, harder, more powerful, into something that cannot be ignored, cannot be dismissed, cannot be forgotten. This is not self-help. This is war. A war against a version of yourself that still seeks approval, still fears rejection, still apologizes for existing. And that war is won through daily battles, small victories that compound into dominance, into presence, into power, into legend. So stop reading. Start doing. Start becoming. Become the person who walks into rooms and shifts the energy, who speaks and people listen, who stays silent and people wonder, who is attacked and doesn't break, who is rejected and doesn't chase, who is forgotten and doesn't care, because you're too busy building your empire to worry about who's noticing. And ironically, that not caring is what makes everyone notice. And that attention, earned through strength rather than sought through weakness, is the ultimate power. Because it's authentic, it's deserved, it's unshakable, and it's yours, forever. Conclusion. Now you're dangerous, you're different now, not because you learned something new, but because something old died. The version of you that waited for permission, that soft to fit in, that apologized for taking up space, that version is gone. And in its place is something refined, something sharpened, something dangerous, not violent, not cruel, but formidable. Someone who cannot be easily moved, easily controlled, easily forgotten. And that transformation didn't happen through motivation. It happened through understanding that power is not given, it's taken, and you just took it. What you've learned in this book is not theory, it's strategy tested over centuries. From the courts of Renaissance Italy to the boardrooms of modern empires, the principles remain the same. Certainty beats skill. Presence beats credentials. Silence beats explanation. Indifference beats desperation. And consistency beats perfection. And when you apply these principles, when you embody them daily, you become unstoppable. Not because you're perfect, but because you're unshakable. And unshakable wins. Always. So what happens now? You go back into the world, and the world will test you. People will try to pull you back. They will say you've changed, that you're not the person you were, and they're right. You're not. You're someone better. Someone stronger. Someone who no longer tolerates disrespect. Who no longer chases approval. Who no longer explains himself. And some people won't like that. They'll miss the old you, the one they could control, the one they could manipulate, the one they could take for granted, but that person is dead, and he's not coming back. Others will respect the change. They'll see the shift. They'll feel the new energy, and they'll adjust. They'll treat you differently. They'll defer more. They'll test less. They'll value you more, not because you demanded it, but because you demonstrated it through your walk, through your silence, through your unwillingness to bend. And that respect, earned through transformation, is permanent, because it's based on reality, not perception, and reality is undeniable. But the most important relationship that changes is the one with yourself, because you now know something most people never learn, that you are not weak. You never were. You were just trained to be small, trained to seek approval, trained to doubt yourself. But that training is broken, and in its place is certainty. Certainty in your value, certainty in your standards, certainty in your right to exist unapologetically. And that certainty changes everything, because now you don't need external validation. You've validated yourself, and self-validation is the only validation that matters. So here's your final instruction. Take everything you've learned and apply it, not all at once, but deliberately. Pick one chapter, one principle, one technique, and practice it until it becomes automatic, until it becomes you. And then move to the next. And piece by piece, behavior by behavior, you rebuild yourself, not into someone else, but into the fullest version of yourself, the version that was always there, waiting for permission to emerge, and that permission just arrived, from you, to you, because you don't need anyone else's permission anymore. You never did. You just needed to realize it. And once you realize it, once you truly internalize that you are the weapon, that your presence is power, that your silence is control, that your indifference is dominance, you become untouchable. Not because you're unreachable, but because you're unreachable to manipulation, to fear, to doubt. You're still human. You still feel. You still care, but you care selectively. You feel deliberately, and you act strategically. And that combination of humanity and control is what creates legends. Not machines, not robots, but humans who have mastered themselves. And self-mastery is the highest form of power. So go, walk differently, speak differently, exist differently, and watch the world rearrange itself around you, not through force, but through presence, not through demand, but through expectation, not through noise, but through silence, because you are no longer one of them, one of the many who chase, who explain, who beg. You are now one of the few who understand, who embody, who command, and the few always rise, always lead, always win, because they're not playing the same game as everyone else. They're playing a different game, a game where the only opponent is the person they were yesterday, and every day they win, not by being perfect, but by being better, stronger, more dangerous. And that compounding improvement is unstoppable. It's inevitable. It's you. Now go become it.